Project 2, Part C. This project is somewhat structured, but allows for a lot of experimentation and exploration. I would like you to thoroughly explore some of these things I'm going to show you, then select your best examples of each type as listed on the Canvas page for the project for your final submission. Here's one I did in previous semesters. I thought it would save time if I just go through some of these and show you how I did them. In class, I generally start from scratch and do them as you would, step by step, and exploring things, and sometimes that can take a lot of class time. This should be more efficient to show you how some of these were done. First thing I'm going to do is create a new page. Command N, new document, and the default is letter, and that's okay, 8.5 by 11 inches. Portrait, you don't want any bleeds. Your color mode can be RGB and it can be medium resolution. You may end up using some raster effects, and this will keep your files manageable in size. The first thing you need is a grid. You can figure out ways to draw grids using rectangles or the line tool, but they've made it easy for you because they expect you may want to draw grids. And if you click on the corner of the line tool, you'll see there's a rectangular grid tool. Take the rectangular grid tool and click in the middle of the page, and you'll notice that I've already practiced this. It's 7.5 inches by 10 inches grid size, so that you have exactly a 1/2 inch margin all the way around your page. Horizontal dividers, 3. Those are dividers running horizontally that divide the grid vertically. It's a little confusing. The vertical dividers, those are the vertical lines that divide it horizontally. There's 2 of those. And you can skew those, but we'd like them all equal in size. Okay, so there's the grid, and I like that in the middle of the page, so in my Align palette, Window, Align, there it is. Okay, my Align palette, I'd like to make sure that I'm aligning to the artboard and then center it horizontally and center it vertically. And then I don't want to accidentally move this, so in my Layer palette, click the arrow to select within that layer and lock that group. Now you can do this entire project on a single layer. If you find yourself getting confused about where you are, maybe you could add another layer. I've pretty much always done this on a single layer. It's not that complicated. Going back to my demo, the first thing I always do is the type as clipping mask. What does that mean? Let's go back to my blank page. Let's say I have a rectangle and I have some other art of some kind. Actually, let's I'm going to take a symbol here. Let's say, take this symbol and shift to constrain, grab a handle, make this thing larger, put it behind my rectangle using Command or Control, open bracket on the keyboard, or you can do that on the layer palette by just grabbing this and moving it. Grab this and move it down there. Okay. And then if you select both of those and right click, it has this option, make clipping mask. So that's what a clipping mask does. It frames or crops an object without editing it because the flower is still here. If I take my direct select tool so I can grab inside here and grab the flower, you can see that it's still completely available inside that clipping mask. And on the layer palette, it says this is a clipping group, clip group, and it shows those objects that are included in the clip group, the rectangle and the flower. You can also do this with type. So, and you can find a picture that you like. I just might stick with this flower, so I'm going to right click on this and make sure I'm in my main selection tool, so I'm not just selecting the flower. Right click on the clipping group and say release clipping mask, and then delete that rectangle. I'm going to position this over here in my first cell of my grid, and then I want to type something that will be recognizable. For instance, I could type as a clipping mask. Now that's kind of small. I'm going to hold the shift key and grab a corner handle and drag this up to a larger size, and then find a more interesting font. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make the clipping mask first and then show you that you can still edit the type. So I'm going to select both of these, right click, and make clipping mask. You can also find this in the object pull down, object clipping mask make, and it'll do that. But like I said, this isn't very interesting typography, but I can still edit the type. And what I'm going to do, I double clicked on that, got into isolation mode where I've got only the type selected. Let's just try it on 2 lines, and it might be more interesting if it was centered. So I'll change my paragraph alignment to centered. The font should be something bigger and bolder so you can actually tell that I've got a flower in there. So let's try, I'm going to go with Binner Poster. Actually, the whole thing to be Binner Poster, so slip there. And then move that into here. It doesn't quite fit in there, so I'm going to double click in here again, put my cursor after clipping and hit the return key again so that I get this all into something that fits into my little rectangle. The leading's a little loose on that, so I can actually select this again and on the leading window here, reduce the space. It's display composition. It would actually be okay if the lead was less than the type size, to the point where maybe it almost touches. The ascenders and the descenders may almost touch. Sometimes they do touch. Let me just go a little bit more and let them touch and see how that looks. Doesn't quite fit in there, so I might have to scale that down again. So that, and again, I'm holding the shift key to constrain so that I don't distort the type. There's times to distort type and there's times to not distort type, and right now I don't really want to distort the type, so I can move that up there. I can also use type as a clipping mask in front of a photo, which is what I generally do in the demo. I have an image here on my desktop. This is a low resolution image. It was reduced in size to use as a canvas header for a course. I never actually used it for that, but I keep it around because I kind of like it. This is old tin plate lithography from the beginning of the 20th century or end of the 19th century. Scale this down a little bit, get it into there. I'm going to Command Shift open bracket to send it all the way to the back. Right click on my clipping group, select it, right click on it, release clipping mask, delete the flower. There's my type. Actually, here, let's do it this way. Just stack it up so it fits a rectangle, fits my square better. Okay, so I've got this picture and I've got my type. I hold the shift key, select one, select the other, holding the shift key so they're both selected, or since my grid is locked, I can just drag across here and get them both selected, and then right click and make clipping mask. And that's sort of interesting, except for it's kind of light in there, so I can double click on this and go into isolation mode and select just the picture and maybe move it around some until I find a spot I like. I could make the type a little bigger now that I've got it stacked. I guess that's about as big as I can get it in there without going outside the box. Reduce my lead so that this is probably just about touching, and I think especially using it as a clipping mask that might work better. Okay, so that's type as a clipping mask. That's one down. That's all you have to do on that one. What else is there? Free distort. Free distort is fairly simple, and so I know what it is that I'm doing. I'm going to type in here free distort. I think I'll put it on 2 lines. And make it bigger. Although it's going to change in size when I free distort it. I would start playing with color and, decide that maybe free distort needs to be red, or a red-orange, or an orange. Well, let's say red. And free distort is an effect that is under the effect pull down. Effect, distort, free distort. Okay, so I can get a bit of a preview of what I'm doing. And let's say, there we go, it's flying through space. And there it is, flying through space. It's a little too big. Hold the shift key and constrain and scale this thing down a little bit. The thing about some of these effects is that you can't go back up here, select this, go back up here, and I want to change the distort. If I click on free distort again, it's going to ask me, do I want to put another effect over that effect? And that could be a little confusing. If you want to edit an effect, and this is something that will come up again later when we're doing something a little more complicated on a later project. Anything that you apply to an object or even type, any effects that you apply, any things that you do with it, will show up in something called the appearance palette, which is this little spot with a dashed line around it, appearance. I'm going to tear this off because this might come in handy. I have this selected and it shows I have a free distort applied to it. I can turn this off or on. I can change the opacity here if I want this to be translucent. I probably don't. Well, actually I might. If I want to edit this free distort, I edit it by clicking on free distort in the appearance palette, not by going back and applying a new one on top of the old one, because then it might get a little too distorted or too complicated. I'm just going to think, well, I want this to go the other direction, so I'll distort it over this way and then say OK. And again, I got it a little big, so I'll squeeze this thing down a little, make sure it stays in there. Now, if you wanted to do two of these, you could. Again, here I go experimenting. It's another free. Actually, I don't have to do that. I'll just Command-C, copy, Command-V, paste. So I have another of these. And this one, I'll free distort back the other way. If I can get a hold of that. There it goes. Okay. So this one's going this way. Not the easiest thing to grab here. Come on, grab. There you go. I'll say OK on that one. I'll change its color to, I don't know, blue. On the appearance palette, I'll change the opacity. And I know I said I wasn't going to experiment, but I couldn't help it, and I did, and I kind of like it. Okay, so that's two effects down. The next one in this row is going to be transform. This is not the same as transforming on the transform palette. So if I type in here transform, and it just occurred to me, I said I was going to, or that you should explore different fonts, so I'm going to, I think we just change both of these to some other font. I'd still like it to be something bold like that. Let's say elephant there. That's kind of neat. Okay, and this one, I want this to be different again, so I'll change this to, you may not have all the fonts that I have. I do a lot of other stuff other than teach at Columbia, so I have lots of fonts I use for other clients, other projects, and I'm not limited to the Columbia fonts. Show card. I would just about never use that, so I'm going to use that, show card. Okay, so there's the word transform in show card. I need it to be a different color. I'm in the mood for orange. I sort of did an orange. I didn't do this orange. Transform allows you to do a lot of things, and you should try several of them and then figure out which ones you like and show me one or two good ones. Transform. Transform has numerous options here. I can, and I've got preview turned on here, so you can see what happens as I can see what happens, you can see what happens as you're doing it. You can horizontally or vertically scale things in transform. You can move them up or down or left or right, which is exactly the opposite of what I just said. There you go. Okay. You can rotate them. You can make copies as you're doing this. Let's say if I make 3 copies of this, that's what it looks like. That's a bit extreme, but what if I did this and move them vertically as I'm doing this. Then maybe I could increase the angle a bit. I'm using the arrow on my keyboard just to go up a degree at a time. Okay, I'll go back a little on this. Might move that way. You can cause them to reflect. Actually, they reflect on the x-axis. Looks pretty good to me. Okay, so that's a transform. I'm going to move that up there. And, you know, again, there's different things, different effects you can achieve with this. You can look at the examples on the instruction sheet, or you can explore on your own and see what other interesting things you might be able to do with that. And again, I think I'm going to go to my transparency palette and reduce the opacity of this, and then see, no, it changes all of them. I was hoping there'd be a different interplay as they overlapped, but there isn't, so I'll just leave it at that. Trying to keep this lesson short, I forgot about blending modes, which for the transparency effect might give an interesting result on transform. You can try those on your own. And that's the first row.